Have you heard of SmartLA 2028? Are the fires in Southern California one big land grab? Is it part of the UN's plan to turn Los Angeles into a 15-minute city using nothing but renewable energy? All of this and more today on the Endtime Show. Welcome to the Endtime Show. Vince Stegall here with Doug Norvell. We're so happy you've joined us today. Don't forget to hit the share button. Make sure you're hearting the video, giving us a thumbs up, and turning on notifications if that's an option for you. And then also, when you engage in the comments, it helps us out so much. So let us know what you're thinking. Post your questions in there. Post your comments. Feel free to banter back and forth. Some of you don't need any encouragement. We know that, but others do. We like to hear from everyone. So from time to time, chime in. Let us know what you're thinking, and don't forget to share right now. It goes a long way in helping get the word out. Before we get into today's highly debated topic, I want to remind you about these increased tariffs on our trade partners and all these regulation changes, and help you understand why gold is a viable diversification tactic now more than ever. Birch Gold's releasing their ultimate guide for gold in the Trump era with a foreword by Donald Trump Jr., and they're giving that away for free. It's a guideline that you want to get. To get your free copy, go to birchgold.com/endtime. The national debt continues to increase. We know that. Our interest payments on the debt continue to increase, and gold is still a hedge against a weakened dollar. And Birch Gold is still the company that we trust here at Endtime to convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in gold. So visit birchgold.com/endtime and get that free guide for gold in the Trump era. There's no obligation, only information. birchgold.com/endtime. All right, Doug. After what we saw in Maui a little over, a year, 2 years ago?
2023, August of 2023.
Okay, a year and a half ago, roughly. Yeah. We saw what happened in Maui. We saw the conspiracy theories going around.
Yeah.
People talked about blue roofs and all sorts of things going on there.
They're still talking about blue houses.
They are. I actually had some people tell me this weekend, they said, have you noticed none of the blue trash cans were destroyed in California? And so all these same arguments are coming up.
Yeah.
And we are hearing all sorts, and it's weird, Doug. It's not that weird, but it seems like now this conversation, compared to Maui, this conversation is being more accepted, more considered as a possibility than it was with Maui.
Yeah.
So here we are again, looking at Los Angeles. We're of course there's been several dozen people die. They expect that number to be significantly increase.
Yeah.
There's still 100,000 people in the evacuation area the last time I saw. And there's a lot of people that have lost everything, Doug. It's a very tragic situation. We are praying for them. Our heart hurts for everyone going through all that. But there are stories going around, suggestions being made that we need to explore and talk about and see what in the world's going on.
Yeah, and I think one of the differences here, Vince, is that we've got celebrities who were directly affected by this. They've lost everything in the fires, and these celebrities are actually now coming out and calling out the mayor of California as well as the governor of California, and saying what a horrible job they've done. So their narrative, hearing somebody like what's his name, Gavin Newsom, having him come out and try to debunk things that Trump's saying and saying, well, Trump's using a lot of false narratives and saying things that aren't true. We've got celebrities that are saying the same thing, and they live there, and they know because they're being directly affected by these things, and they're calling out Gavin Newsom. And, you know, I mean, it's interesting because I think there's more of a... I guess an awakening in people that have seen so many different things that have been dubbed conspiracy theory and disinformation that have turned around and been true. That now, you know, people are looking at this with a little bit more of an objective, saying, well, I don't know, you know, this might be real what they're talking about here. So it is an interesting time we live in, Vince. It's very strange that these things are happening, and it's this eerie similarity to Maui that's happening in California. A lot of things are strange. I mean, you sent me a story I hadn't even seen yet about a lithium mine that was close to the Palisades fire, which paused or had the fire department pause in being able to go into that area because the fumes were so toxic, could have hurt the firefighters in a lithium area, which lithium's interesting because of all the conspiracy theory about North Carolina and the lithium mines there. Some people may know about that. Some people may not have a clue what I'm talking about right now, because it's one of those rabbit holes, you know, that was brought up that could be why so many people are out of homes now in North Carolina, because there was a huge lithium area that the government wanted to mine and they couldn't get the people to move out of the area, and so they just created a weather storm that wiped everything out. That's a conspiracy theory. I'm not saying that's true. I'm just saying that's the conspiracy theory. So it's very strange because we live in a weird time right now. And remember, just a couple of months ago, we talked about black swan events that would change the way the world looked to so many different people if you're affected by this black swan. Some people are saying this is a black swan. Some people are thinking another black swan event will happen within the next 8 days because of inauguration coming up. So we live in a weird time, Vince.
We sure
it's very
do.
strange.
And then you start hearing about SmartLA 2028.
Yes.
And how you look at that and see what the plans were for that.
Right.
And then you start really scratching your head.
Yeah. Because this has been since 2015 they've been talking about this.
Right.
Yeah.
What do we need to know about that, Doug?
Well, so similar, like I said before, to Maui. Remember Maui, when those fires happened back in August of 2023, Vince, one of the things that they had done was they were setting up like a whole little village there that was running on solar power. The homes were running on solar power. They were experimenting. Everybody got in a free electric car to drive around on the island. All these different weird things, because they were talking about how they were going to make Maui the first smart city that was going to be like a whole area. And now those areas that were burned in those fires, the people were given, I think, $750 or some minuscule amount like that. And they could never rebuild their home. They're not going to be able to rebuild it. I went back today and looked at photos to see where we are in Maui now, and Maui is just a clean slate. There's a couple of little buildings, but everything else is a ruined pile of a heaping pile of just ruin, and so some of that's been moved out, and it looks like they've made way for things. And remember, they talked about the fact that they could come back now with this smart city technology, these 15-minute cities, and rebuild, and those people could move back into that area. So it's interesting that that's what we're seeing California talk about now. And even Gavin Newsom said the other day in an interview that they have been reimagining LA, and they call it Reimagining LA 2.0. And it's something that, I mean, the fires are still going on, and he's talking about this like everything's grand and fine in California, and hey, we're just going to move ahead with this because we've got a World Cup coming to this city. We've got an Olympics coming to the city, and we want to have this ready to fit in with the UN's Agenda 2030, which also brings up the WEF and the UN on these smart cities and these 15-minute cities.
Do you remember what those smart cities were? Some of them, we know LA is one of them. We know Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, if I recall correctly. Dallas, Texas.
There was one in Ohio.
Yeah, they're all over the
U.S.
The hope for them is all over the U.S.
Yes.
And we've seen the strategic planning here in Dallas. You've been in Dallas your whole life. I've been here since 2007. Yeah. Even when I got here, Doug, I don't recall there being anything where there was apartment buildings with 7-Elevens at the base and everything you would ever need. Right. If there were those, they were pretty rare. Now, they're all over the place. It's unbelievable how they have strategically put shopping centers and apartment complexes either right next to each other or on top of each other. And it's turned into exactly what they describe in the WEF and the UN when they start talking about these smart cities. And then you hear Dallas is one of them, and I'm going, well, no wonder. And then I'll go to other places, and I don't see this nearly as much, if at all. And it starts making me wonder if it's not just a conspiracy theory anymore, Doug.
Right.
And it's a little odd, and I don't want to be a partaker of it.
Well, I mean, remember some of the things too that's in that agenda, Vince, because you've even got older apartment complexes that are being granted money to put these type of facilities in their apartments. So they're given funding from, I don't know where the funding comes from, but the apartment complex all of a sudden now has a grocery store and a hair salon in it, where before it was just an apartment complex. So they're even taking older, outdated apartments and making them city smart. These electric locking systems they have in their door, where you don't even use a key anymore. You wave a little card in front of your door and it unlocks your door and you can go in. So all these different things like that are beginning to happen. And you're right, Dallas is a big hub for that. We've even seen like an explosion along, well, I hate to say explosion, but we've seen an explosion of these apartments and these businesses like you're talking about, where we'll have a church, a hospital, a restaurant row, and then apartments scattered all around that. Like that's the main hub, is what you would need: a church, place to gather, a place to go if you're needing a doctor, and restaurants to eat, and all these apartments built around it. A true 15-minute city where you can walk to everything.
Well, Doug, I recently connected with a business owner, and they have a business in the bottom of one of these buildings, and they told me that the owner of the building paid them a little over $1 million to come in and establish this business here. And that's kind of how that worked for them. Now, I can't say that's true for everyone, but as they told me that, I thought, that's interesting. That must be kind of part of the plan. So it is interesting how that keeps, and man, there's so much to talk about with this, Doug. It's unbelievable.
Right.
I think about the lives lost. It's terrible, and we never like to see that. And regardless of even the big plan, or is it part of the world government system? I don't know exactly. There seems to be some indications that it is, but I don't like to even really imagine these lives being lost. It bothers me a lot.
Yeah. Well, it is very bothersome to think that, we're just kind of tossed along the wayside to get out of the way of the plans of the world government and what they really want to do. And that's what it seems like is happening. It's not what we're saying is going to happen, but we have some interesting videos today that I want to show and let everybody kind of hear for themselves the things that are being said, because before it was like the Democrats against Trump, or the uniparty against Trump, maybe I should say, or deep state, however you want to say it, against Trump. But now there's other voices being spoken out there, and it's getting louder and louder, and everything seems to be pointing back to these are agendas of a one world government, which ties it all into Bible prophecy and what we talk about every day. So even though this is a terrible tragedy that's happening in California, that not only lives are being lost, but things are being destroyed that can never be brought back. I mean, there are buildings in those areas, that can't be brought back, and people's livelihoods that'll never be brought back. And so,
Doug, we're not even going to get into the insurance situation,
right?
Like how all that played out. So many people lost their insurance coverage
before this happened,
and now they can't.
Which
rebuild.
Makes it seem more like a land grab type of situation. So,
and people need to see this video from Gavin Newsom, Doug. And before we get to it, make sure you share the video again. I'll reiterate that. That helps us out a lot. Everyone in the world needs to hear about what the Endtime show is talking about every single day. Of course, it's available for free on all social media. It's available for free on television and radio, and of course on only source at watch.osn.tv. So it's available for free because of incredible partners like you that give every single month at endtime.com/give. So thank you for that. We're so grateful for your support. We're going to keep shouting from the rooftops the truths as we see them, and we're going to explain current events through a lens of Bible prophecy, and your help goes a long way in making sure that happens. So share the video, and be sure that you're engaging in the comment section. Before we get to these clips, we know how important the sanctity of human life is, and our friends at ACCU, they feel the same way. They fight for the preborn, and they share that passion with us, and they're excited to announce their partnership with Every Life to sponsor diapers to new moms who are choosing life. So America's Christian Credit Union will donate a box of Every Life diapers to a Christian pregnancy resource center for every new member who opens a checking account right now. So it's a great time to come together and fight for the preborn. Join these two incredible organizations in that effort just by switching where you bank. Plus, if you enter promo code Endtime when you sign up, they're going to give you a $100 bonus to your new account. So all the details are available at endtime.com/ACCU, and go there and check it out. Enter code Endtime at checkout so you can get that $100 bonus. All right, Doug, what's Gavin Newsom saying now? Are we ready to go into this video, or do you need to set us up?
No, I mean, this is just his interview with NBC. First thing I want you to do is look at this and see if it looks like he's in a screen somewhat like what we're in front of as he's doing this, instead of actually being out there. It's kind of a weird looking footage, but just want you to hear the things he's saying, because we're going to talk about some of that as we go down through the program today.
Of course, the next several years, Los Angeles will be host to the World Cup, and then the Super Bowl, and then the Olympics. With this rebuilding effort needing to take place, is LA going to be ready for all of those global events?
My humble position, and it's not just being naively optimistic, that only reinforces the imperative moving quickly, doing in the spirit of collaboration and cooperation. President of the United States, Donald Trump, to his credit, was helpful in getting the Olympics to the United States of America, to get it down here in LA, and we thank him for that. This is an opportunity for him to shine, for this country to shine, for California and this community to shine. The opportunity with all of that and all that opportunity and that pride and spirit that comes from not just hosting those three iconic games and venues, but also the opportunity, I think, to rebuild at the same time. And that's why we're already organizing a Marshall Plan. We already have a team looking and reimagining LA 2.0, and we're making sure everyone's included, not just the folks on the coast, people here that were ravaged by this disaster.
You just said you're organizing a Marshall Plan for the rebuilding of California. What is that Marshall Plan? Tell us about this Marshall Plan.
We're just starting to lay out. I mean, we're still fighting these fires. So we're already talking to city leaders. We're already talking to civic leaders. We're already talking to business leaders and nonprofits. We're talking to labor leaders. We're starting to organize how we can put together a collection of individuals on philanthropy for recovery, how we can organize the region, how we can make sure that we are seeking federal assistance for the Olympics more broadly, but also federal assistance for the recovery efforts, and how we can galvanize the community with folks that love this community to really develop a mindset so that at scale we're dealing with the scope of this tragedy and responding to it at scale with efficiency, like the executive order I talked about, time value of delivering projects, addressing building codes, addressing permitting issues, and moving forward to rebuilding and being more resilient.
Doug, I'd be stunned if that's not an LED wall behind
I know,
him.
it was very strange looking.
I want to see some photos from that recording if I can. So what do y'all think? Is he standing in front of an LED screen? Put one in the comments if you think yes. Put two if you think no. I'm not sure, but man, it looks like an LED screen.
Well, there is a whole lot more to that video. I took this clip out because to me this was odd. That the governor of California, instead of addressing the situation with the fire and talking about the fire, he's already talking about rebuilding and getting ready for a 2028 Olympics. That's all the conversation was about there, except for the first part of the video where he was ridiculing Trump for spreading false information and saying that reservoirs were dried up that he says wasn't dried up. We're going to look at that a little bit more as we get into this program as well, but I wanted you to see for yourself that the excitement that this guy's got for this opportunity. He says we have an opportunity to rebuild before the Olympics come in. Now you're talking about people's livelihood, which Vince, you talked about right there before the clip, that a lot of these people's insurance were canceled. Actors who have a lot of money and a lot of property there, they've been on saying, look, my insurance canceled me 2 weeks ago. I can't even rebuild now. I have no insurance to do this. And isn't that strange? And I mean...
Well, and part of the conspiracy with Maui was this is just happening to regular folks, and it didn't do it to Oprah and all these other famous people. And now here we see that's not the case. So it is happening to people that you've never heard their names, and also to celebrities that are known internationally. So it is interesting.
Yeah, it's real interesting. And if people want to look at the article themselves to see about the SmartLA 2020, I want to just tell you where that's at. It's in the Gateway Pundit, and they've got in that particular article, they have a video in there that takes you through the SmartLA 2028 objective and what they're trying to do, initiatives, what they call it. The redevelopment plan that they have for this already, and it's going to align with the United Nations 2030 agenda. The fires, it says, which have consumed over 38,000 acres and caused significant loss of life and property, have disproportionately affected regions earmarked for redevelopment, including the Pacific Palisades and Hollywood. That was one of the craziest things the other day, because I'm thinking of all the evil things that you hear about what's going on in Hollywood, this whole P. Diddy stuff that's come out and everything else, and you see the Hollywood sign there on the side of the mountain engulfed in flames, and I'm like, wow. It's almost like God himself said, look, I will not be mocked. And it's strange because I saw a TikTok video or one of those Instagram videos the other day where they were at some award ceremony and they were talking about the shout outs and the shout outs to their friends and their families and their moms. And it said, God, the creator of the universe, 0. Like God has no shout outs for these awards that people are winning. And the next day these fires broke out and it's like, whoa. And you see that Hollywood sign burn, and it's like, man, you know, that scripture that says God will not be mocked, and they're mocking God, and the next day their world's crumbling down. Now, not everybody's involved in that. I understand there's good people out there in LA and everything, in Hollywood especially. There's some good people out there too, but there's a lot of evil that's going on there. And some people have even said, another conspiracy theory has said, you know, isn't it strange that a lot of these people whose homes burned up and everything in it were on the P. Diddy list? And so if you've been keeping up with any of that, I didn't even put 2 and 2 together until I saw that conspiracy theory, and I'm like, that is interesting as well. But the crazy thing about it is they're on a fast track to get this high-tech LA 2028 program done, to where they're going to have these smart cities and they're going to be running on electric. And remember, everything out there in California, Gavin Newsom had already said by 2025, they didn't even want gas-powered vehicles in California. This is 2025. And then now we see this devastating thing happening, and they're talking about these smart cities coming in LA. But you know, in California, you can't even buy a gas-powered weed eater or edger or lawnmower anymore. You can't do it.
Well, and did you hear about the fire trucks that were sent in from other states?
Yeah.
They couldn't even come in because they were being inspected in Sacramento. It's like,
yeah, they had to inspect them to see how much emissions they were putting off.
Yeah, it's like, let's get the fires out. That seems like it should be the priority.
Yeah.
And Doug, how does all this tie into Bible prophecy? This is where the smart cities really jumps in at me, because we've heard Klaus Schwab, as some people call him.
Yeah.
We've heard the World Economic Forum, United Nations,
yeah,
all these globalists, whether they're from the United States or not. We've heard many people that are on with the globalist agenda. I even remember some Endtime magazine articles from a long time ago talking about the Internet of Things.
Yes.
And then I moved into a house with a new dishwasher, and it said, do you want to connect to your Wi-Fi? And my wife's like, absolutely not. We don't do that here.
Yeah.
And so I'm going, why do I need, apparently you can start your dishwasher from your phone now, Doug, if you have the smart dishwasher, and that's the case for of course, people are controlling their HVAC systems, their air conditioning and heating from their phones, and even your garage doors. You can program all these things now.
Yeah.
The Internet of Things, while maybe not everyone's going to live in a smart city, quite like what we've described with the apartment complex and such, they're tying in all these things and making it so convenient for us that, boy, if you can't charge your phone, you may not even know how to start your washing machine, or you may not even be able to open your garage or turn off your security system or whatever.
Yeah.
It's really weird to see how it's progressed, because just a few years ago, I looked at all this and said, we will never get there. There's no way people are ever going to embrace this.
Right.
And there's people embracing it that I never thought I'd see embrace it. So what in the world's these smart cities?
You know, that whole thing about the Internet of Things, remember here in the Dallas area, there was a couple who made international news because they had taken a chip and this chip worked with their smart house.
Yes.
And so with this chip, they didn't even have to have a key to get in the house. They can unlock the door just by having the chip on their body, turn their lights on. When they walk into a room, the lights automatically come on, those kind of things. The refrigerator would communicate with their television, which would communicate with them and let them know that they were low on eggs and milk and things like that. And that was like a huge story, because they're like, look how convenient this is, look how neat it is, how high tech it is. And that has to do with that Internet of Things. But it all comes down, Vince, to control. And we've heard Klaus Schwab's #1 man, Yuval Noah Harari, say things like, eventually everybody's going to be connected to that Internet of Things. It's going to be like we're going to be interconnected and we'll be transhuman. And this is part of that movement to get you comfortable with all this stuff, to move you right down that line. But it's all about control, because a smart city, for instance, you talked about people having these thermostats that you can run on your phone. Well, they could shut that down in an energy crisis. Like, say, in the middle of summer, you want to keep your house on 70 degrees, and they're like, no, we said 78.
Yeah.
And so they bump it up, and you can't bump it back down. It's all about control. If there was another outbreak, like right now they're talking about bird flu, they could lock down an entire structure, your whole apartment complex, with electric locks. They could lock you indoors and say, sorry, you can't leave unless it's emergency. If it's an emergency, dial 911. And so
Doug,
this
it sounds
is where
like
we're
you're trying
headed.
to scare people now, or at least that's what some will say.
Yeah.
Doug's trying to say that the big brother's going to lock me in my home. That's
Yeah.
what some are going to say.
Well, that's what happened to some people in China, remember?
True.
In a smart city type of environment during COVID, and then the apartment building caught on fire, and those people died in that fire. So I'm not trying to scare anybody. I'm trying to help you to see where these things can go to. Even though technology is good when it's used for good things, it can be used for evil as well. And we got to be real careful, because we know there's a mark of the beast coming.
Yeah.
We know without that mark, you won't be able to buy, sell, or trade. And yet we've got this kind of stuff going on where they're saying, look, this is where we need to move everything. LA is a major city in the United States, and all eyes are on LA right now.
Yep. We're going to have to look more on smart cities on the other side of the break. While we're on commercial, don't forget to go to First Cup Coffee. They're a Christian-owned Patriot coffee company out of the great state of Texas, and we love all of their roasts. Go to firstcup.com, use code Endtime to get 10% off today. We'll be right back after this break.
A reminder of the breaking news this hour. At least 22 people are reported to have died in a strike in Gaza.
The rise of Islam.
We're trying to bring answers for so many families desperately.
Is the Israel-Hamas-Iran conflict World War III? So let's talk about the 4 horsemen. What do these horses symbolize? These are the 4 spirits of the heavens which go forth from standing before the Lord of all the earth. In the end time, the true people of God will not be weak, anemic, and defeated. These prophesied events are revealing we are quickly approaching the time of the Great Tribulation right now.
Now streaming on OneSource and available to order at endtime.com/screen. Go to endtime.com/screen or call 800-ENDTIME.
What if you could understand Bible prophecy? Dave Robbins, the host of the End Time Show's TV and radio programs, is holding a free prophecy conference near you. Gain peace and understanding about what the Bible says concerning end time prophecy. Call 1-800-ENDTIME or go to endtime.com/events to see when Dave will be in a location near you.
Welcome back to the End Time Show. Vince Stegall here with Doug Norvell. We're happy you've joined us today. Don't forget that we are launching Only Source. Yes, we've been saying that for a few months now, but we are still launching. God is doing some incredible things, and we look forward to expanding Only Source, not only on television channels, but also in the streaming side of things. And who knows, we've said it before, if the Lord opens the door for us to buy radio stations, we will walk through those doors as He opens the doors and provides. And so we're excited about what God is doing with Only Source. We still are getting donations matched to that. If you go to endtime.com/one, that will take you to the page where you can donate and be a founding contributor to Only Source Network. Of course, the Grace Series, Doug, we're getting a lot of great feedback on the Grace Series.
Yes, we are.
We just created a new series. It's releasing every single week. Endtime.com/grace will get you to the page there on Only Source. But it's an 8-episode series. 5 are out right now, and they release weekly. Dr. Jim Little's taught that series, and it has been a blessing.
Yeah.
Some folks that have watched it, I know them personally, and they've been preachers for decades, and they said this is an incredible resource. And then some, not preachers, they're just regular old folks like us, Doug. I guess we're preachers, but we're regular folks too. But they're watching it going, wow, God really changed my heart while I was watching this. And so everybody needs to go to endtime.com/grace. If you're not already part of Only Source, do that today. And we are going to be adding more and more content on Only Source. And God is going to help us expand His kingdom, and we're going to do whatever we can to do that. So we're excited about what's happening with Only Source. You can give at endtime.com/one. Your donation will be matched as long as you give less than $100,000. And you can watch new content on Only Source at endtime.com/grace. All right, Doug, so what do we need to know about smart cities? Because we talk a lot about that, and in spite of that, there's still some folks out there that I see them in the chat as I was scrolling through there on the break that say, I've never heard of smart cities until now. So maybe a good overview on what that is.
Well, so that smart city, like we talked about before, it kind of links everybody together through technology. Okay, so that's what a smart city is. But it can be controlled, and that's where the fear kind of comes in with people that are hesitant to allow this to come in. But this was all ramrodded by the World Economic Forum. It's in partnership with the G20 Summit. They launched this a couple years ago, and it's called the Global Smart Cities Alliance. You can go to the World Economic Forum's webpage and look up Smart Cities, Global Smart Cities Alliance, and you can get all the information on smart cities that you want straight from their mouth. But this is something to establish universal guidelines for implementing these smart city technologies, and not just here in the United States. We're talking globally. It was spearheaded really by the technology people in Japan who came up with the governance and framework for these smart city technologies, and they, with the G20 leaders, came up with this alliance to say, yes, we're all going to be part of this. So remember, the people that go to the WEF, that you're invited to go to those, and it's normally the political and the financial, the business owners, the movers and shakers in those industries that are invited there. All these political world leaders, the Pope's been there and spoken before, all the economic people, the financial people in the world, the pharmaceutical people, everybody that you could imagine come to these things. But this is an alliance that will focus on leveraging the technology to tackle challenges such as urbanization, climate change, and inclusive growth, aligning with the global initiatives like Sustainable Development Goals and key stakeholders that will emphasize the importance of openness, citizen empowerment, and inclusivity in these smart city developments. One of the things that we've seen in the past is Saudi Arabia has talked about building this city, remember, made of glass, that would go hundreds of miles straight through the desert, and it would be a smart city that would have a train that ran through it and everything, and it would have everything you would ever desire, and you're encased in a glass structure that's over 100 miles long.
It's like a cruise ship,
yeah,
a massive cruise ship in the middle of the desert. You live in your pod. I mean, it's just like these sci-fi movies you've seen. You live in your pod, you come out and get on this little train, that goes right by your door, and then you go to work or whatever it is right there in that city.
Yeah.
It's pretty weird. It's as sci-fi as you can imagine. And
it really is.
Really, they're planning to do it. I don't know when it starts now, but
yeah.
I don't even remember when we did that show, Doug. But
it was sometime last year, and I can remember a video on it where it showed like the video idea of this, and it showed a kid coming home from school on the train. Dad's waiting in the apartment for the kid. The train pulls up, and a pod lifts the kid up into the house. The kid steps off and greets his dad, and the train takes off under the floor. It's like your kids are delivered right there. It's like the George Jetson of reality in Saudi Arabia. It's really strange. So, yeah, but this is all a framework of the WEF, Vince, and it's something that, of course, Gavin Newsom, and he is a globalist, and so are a lot of the Democratic people, especially in California. They want everything to line up with the UN's Agenda 2030, with the WEF's smart city technology, all these things. But the really crazy thing, and it's something that I want you to see, there were some other weird things going on. Even if you think, okay, the fires don't have anything to do with a smart city, this is just happenstance. There's some weird things that have been talked about with illegal aliens running around with flamethrowers on them, starting fires. There's been all kinds of different weird things, but I want you to see, this is an interview on Fox News with Mel Gibson, and I want everybody to watch this. And Mel, I like Mel Gibson. You know, he did The Passion of the Christ and that kind of thing. He's a strange guy anyway, but he in this clip, it's almost like he wants to say something, but he's guarding his words. And so if you haven't seen this, this is interesting. This is Fox News Mel Gibson interview.
At the same time, Mel, there are numerous complaints, as you alluded to, that the fire hydrants did not have water or water pressure, and the LA fire chief herself reacted. Watch this.
My stance on this is when a firefighter comes up to a hydrant, we expect there's going to be water. We don't control the water supply. Our firefighters are there to protect lives and property and to make sure that we're properly trained and equipped. That's my position on this. So if there's no water, I don't know how the water gets to the hydrants.
Mel, reaction to that?
Well, you know, I know they were messing with the water, letting reserves go for one reason or another. They've been doing that a while. California has a lot of problems that sort of baffle the mind as far as why they do things. And then in the events like this, you sort of look, well, is it on purpose? Which it's an insane thing to think. But one begins to ponder whether or not there is a purpose in mind. What could it be? You know, I don't know. Do they want the state empty? I don't know.
Well, Mel, there's already talk, and we played a couple of sound bites of reimagining the way rebuilding occurs. And obviously there's a great need for high-density housing in California and across the country. That's a big push by the climate folks. And you're already hearing rumblings of that. In this case, like goodbye single-family homes, hello high-density housing.
Yeah. It's pretty scary, and it'll take decades to do that too. It's like even if it, you know, if it's a good idea, which I don't know if it is, but reminds me of the old cattle barons clearing people off the land, you know. But I don't know. I can make all kinds of horrible theories up in my head, conspiracy theories and everything else, but it just seemed a little convenient that there was no water, and and that the wind conditions were right, and that there are people ready and willing and able to start fires. And are they commissioned to do so, or are they just acting on their own volition? I don't know. But they seem pretty well equipped, some of these people that they're catching.
You can tell he's apprehensive about what he's saying. He's thinking before he says anything. He wants to say more, and he's not. He's holding back. But it's interesting because the clip of the fire chief that says, look, I don't know where the water was, but it wasn't in the hydrants. That's not conspiracy theory. That really happened. And so for Gavin Newsom to say things about, you know, well, I don't know where Trump comes up with this disinformation about reservoirs being emptied and things like that, that's not true. It's very true. It's all that is very true. So it's strange because we're seeing so many people now respond and react. I've seen stuff that, I mean, there's so many clips out there today. I was going through stuff all morning. My head started hurting because I'm seeing other actors and other people stepping up and pointing the finger right at Gavin Newsom and saying, Governor, this is your fault. You need to step down and let somebody take control who's got a little bit of competency. So it's interesting because even the lady there on Fox News, I don't know her name, but
Laura Ingraham.
Is that Laura Ingraham?
Yeah.
I have no idea. I don't watch Fox News, but I'm just saying that, you know, there she is saying, you know, they've already started talking about implementing these smart cities, and the fires are still raging on. So it's very strange. It's a strange situation. You know, Tucker Carlson, he did an interview with Michael Schellenberger. Do you know that guy? Have you ever heard of him before?
Nope.
Tucker says that he's one of the greatest reporters ever. And this guy said the governor should have called up the National Guard. He should have called all of his neighboring states. He should have called Canada and Mexico and asked for all the backup help that he could. They should have started circling C-130s that are especially retrofitted and can dump fire retardant or water. They should have had helicopters circling to see where the fires were, and it should have been an immediate mobilization. So he makes a very good point in all this. I've got a couple of clips from him. I don't know if we've got time, though. Do we have time, Sam? Okay, so Sam says we don't have time. We'll have to check that out when we come back. But the thing is that, like I said, Gavin Newsom comes out and he says that Trump's disinformation is causing the disaster to be worse, that it's causing division within his state. He blames, Trump blames the governor and the mayor for a lot of the mishaps that are going on there in California. And he says that they need to be held accountable. Now, the thing is some of the things he talked about may not have lined up. He talked about Gavin Newsom diverting some water that was supposed to be reserved for these fires, cutting that off to save some fish. Gavin Newsom says that's ridiculous. He doesn't even know what he's talking about. But we're going to see evidence that those reservoirs were empty. The main one right there by the Palisades that could have helped this fire. And to have fire hydrants that have no water, that's unheard of. Who's ever heard of something?
When you sent me this video, I'm like, this is creepy, first of all. Why is it this way? Like, there's no answers that I've been able to find as to why we are where we're at with this.
Yeah.
And I'm going, surely some of this isn't true, but if there's something that's not true in that video, we weren't able to find it.
Right.
And so it is quite alarming, Doug, and I'm looking at this going, okay, if all this is connected, what do the people in California do? Like, from a biblical perspective, like, obviously they've got to deal with the logistics of just getting their life back together. But if there is a plan, and there is, Doug, whether it's specific to them or not, there is a plan for there to be a world government system. So how in the world should they react? We're going to look at both of those things on the other side of the break. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back.
The Roman government controlled the world. So many people were looking for a different Messiah, a rescuing Messiah. Remember the story of the woman at the well. The woman saith unto him, I know that Messiah cometh, which is called Christ. And Jesus said unto her, I that speak unto thee am he. Jesus very clearly stated that he was God and that he was the Messiah. We're even more blessed because we haven't seen those things, but yet we believe. When Jesus cried out, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? He knew every one of these prophecies had to be fulfilled. He said, it is finished.
Now streaming on OneSource and available to order at endtime.com/revealed. Go to endtime.com/revealed or call 800-ENDTIME.
Welcome back to the End Time Show. Vince Stegall here with Doug Norvell. Thank you so much for joining us. We've got one segment left, and we've got a lot of ground to cover. So, Doug, where do we go from here?
Well, I cut this video with Tucker Carlson into two different parts because it's such a long interview. It was like over 2 hours. But some interesting information. Michael Schellenberger breaks down two things that they did wrong in this situation. There's a whole lot in that video. You should really go check it out about it. But this is the first thing that he says went wrong in California and what needs to be done about it. So let's look at this video.
So, but that they knew on January 1st, January 2nd, that the fires were coming. Like, it was inevitable that there would be fires. Like, there was like zero doubt among anybody that knows anything about fire in Los Angeles that the fires were coming. The fires were coming. So the governor should have been there. The mayor should have been there. You should just literally, it's all about, and it's all about prevention, in part because by the time the fire trucks are having to weave their way up those little hills of the Pacific Palisades, it's over. I mean, so the other thing to keep in mind is that, okay, well, so that's the first thing, is that they just have to mobilize in advance.
So that's a feature for people who aren't aware of the geography of LA.
Oh, it's just incredible. I mean, it's why it's so beautiful, right? Beautiful places are dangerous.
Exactly right.
So that's like the main event. So because I knew I did, my first thing I did is I was like, look, they're going to come out and say it was inevitable, and that's just a total lie.
Because of global warming.
Yeah, because of global warming. And I mean, anyway, we can get there's so many places to go here, but just on the most practical sense, they knew the fires were coming and they didn't do anything. The mayor leaves the country. She flies to Ghana after having promised not to leave the country, by the way, as mayor. She's traveled at least six times out of the country, and she promised not to travel. Why is it important the mayor be there? Because you can say, well, aren't there other people in charge? Because it's an emergency command situation. She has to be able to issue orders and to, waive regulations and make things happen. The governor has to be doing that. They didn't do that. They should have had, by the way, they should get the fire trucks up into the fire areas right away. Yeah. They can also start, they can start clearing brush. They can start, but literally they could just be in those neighborhoods, just sitting there for days at a time, waiting for the fires to happen, put them out as soon as they happen. I'm not saying that they would have been able to prevent all the fires from happening, but you remember, like, the big fire in 1993, I think it was Laguna Beach, or maybe it was Malibu as well, but it was like 700 homes. So we're at 10,000, structures at this point, homes and buildings gone, 200,000 people evacuated. I mean, it's like, it's madness. It never needed to get to that level. Okay, so that's the first thing. They just needed to have been there before the fire started, and they didn't do that because the politicians are they're focused on themselves.
He makes some great points in this video. One of the things he talks about when they talk about global warming, I mean, you want to talk about conspiracy theory, let's talk about global warming for a second. He throws out a good fact about the state of Texas. And he said Texas has more woodlands and more natural forest than California because of the size of Texas. And we have wildfires that start in Texas, but they don't devastate and do these things because of things that Texas already has in place to protect those areas. And so, not that it couldn't happen here, but what he's saying is, in all the wildfires that have happened here, they haven't gotten out of control like California wildfires have because of the policies they have, and because they just like to blame it on global warming and say, well, we don't really need to do anything for prevention because global warming's happening. And, Trump's a global warming denier, so we can't listen to anything he has to say. Well, that's one of the things that the article talks about from ABC News. They talk about how Trump is throwing out these allegations against Newsom and against Bass, the mayor of California there, and about this water supply and all those things. But of course, they deny all that, and they say there was no reservoirs that were empty. But at the same time, another really weird thing, and I meant to say this earlier, and I don't want to stop and not say it now. I want to go ahead and just say it now, is the fact that we look at the difference between Maui, for instance, Ohio. Remember Palestine, Ohio, with the big train derailment? Mm-hmm. We look at the situation with North Carolina, and we're seeing where FEMA did not help those people out, gave them $750 or whatever. Biden has come out and told his buddy Newsom, we're going to pay 100% and spare no cost. You know, we're going to come back and we're going to reimburse you for 100% of everything for the next, like, what was it, 6 months or a year that he said he was going to be able to do that. So he's gone all out for California, for Newsom, but North Carolina's not getting that kind of treatment. There's videos out there of people that couldn't get FEMA to pay for another night's hotel stay for people. So people were having to sleep in tents and in their cars, and it's 17 degrees outside. And the person on the video saying, why can't we get help like California got? Why are we not getting this help? FEMA's helping California. Why can't they help us? So it's weird. That the whole scenario is very strange. Does it have something to do with world government? I don't know. But this next video.
Well, I've got one more question, Doug, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir.
The video here, he says they knew the fires were coming.
Mm-hmm.
How is that?
Well, the weather predicted that if anything caught on fire, it could turn into a disaster because the Santa Ana winds are blowing so strong there. And did you see any of the footage of the fire? Where
I saw
you
the tornado.
Yeah, the fire tornadoes. There were several of those. Did you see the footage of the people that were trapped in their home and it was all glass on the back and the fire tornado right outside their deal? Frightening. I mean, that was apocalyptic. You know, that looks like you're in hell, basically. And so they knew that the conditions were ripe. And so he's saying they could have taken precautions ahead of time and had people strategically placed looking for this to happen.
You know how the Ronald Reagan Ranch is out that way? You heard about that?
Yes,
Did
but
you hear about this?
I haven't heard this.
Well, they've never had a fire come through like devastating. And they say that part of the reason that is because they bring in goats every year to clean up the brush and all different. They clean up the mess.
Right.
And apparently, you know, that's not an option in California because of the environmental laws and such, which we've heard some folks harp on that. But it's just interesting that we have an example there where apparently the people preserving the Ronald Reagan Ranch, they bring the goats in to help clean it up so the forest fires could be contained better or prevented.
Yeah.
So it just seems like there's some solutions here that we aren't exploring there because, and by we, I mean, I guess the leadership in California, because I have no way of changing that there, but nonetheless, it seems like a lot of this could be preventable.
Common sense tells you that a lot of it's preventable. I mean, they have laws restricting you from being able to burn at certain times, you know, but then there's other times where you can burn. And one of the things I do around my place, because I have pine trees, and we get a lot of pine needles on the ground, and those pine needles, they're like accelerant, you know. So 2 or 3 times a year on a day when the wind's not blowing, I have to rake all that stuff up in the driveway and catch it on fire and let that stuff burn because I don't want it laying around, because a lightning strike or an ember from, you know, the grill or anything like that, that stuff is like gasoline. And so there are ways that you can prevent some of that stuff, and that's one of those ways right there. This next video that I broke up from that Tucker interview, I want to show you this because he talks about the very reservoir that was mentioned and it being empty. Vince, he says that it was empty for over a year. It's been sitting empty for over a year. And with things like knowing that fire season's coming up, he said, why did that reservoir not get fixed before now, and why is it sitting empty? So let's watch this next little video here.
So that was the first thing. The second thing is the water runs out, right? So that was and you hear people go, oh, well, there's nothing you can do because like once the homes are burned down, like the water lines, you can see the pictures, you know, the water like will be spilling out, you know, of the homes. And so that lowered the water pressure. That was a total lie. There is something called the Santa Ynez water reservoir, which is the potable water, meaning the drinking water that also goes into the fire hydrant system, because the fire hydrant, you know, the fire hydrant system is the drinking water system. It's the same thing. It's the exact same system. That reservoir was empty, and it was the second largest of the 10 potable water reservoirs that serve LA County. Let me make one distinction here, because there's actually 2 kinds of reservoirs. There's the reservoir with the snowmelt water, these really big lakes, basically, and and then there's that's the unpurified water, and then they purify it, and then they feed into these reservoirs where they store the water for all sorts of reasons, for emergencies. So that is an absolute crime, that Santa Ynez Reservoir. Why? Because first of all, it's right next to the Pacific Palisades. So for people that don't know, Pacific Palisades, of course, is like right near. It's on your way to Malibu. It's like the last big neighborhood before you get to the.
And they're Palisades. They're over the water.
That's right. And so they have a reservoir. Like, you look at the Google Maps and you look at where the Santa Ynez Reservoir is, it's right next to, like, a few thousand feet from Pacific Palisades, and it's really high up. And so if you had water coming from that, the firefighters would have had plenty of water. They would have had the water pressure, even if you had lost some homes and had the water out. So, I mean, two major failures. The first was the failure to aggressively respond days in advance, even though they had very clear warnings. The second was the reservoir was empty. One reporter has reported that the firefighters had not been warned by the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power that reservoir was empty. If that's true, that's just additionally scandalous.
And they say it's true.
Yeah.
They say they didn't know.
Newsom refuted these allegations, and he emphasized that the state reservoirs were all full, and attributing the initial water shortage to power outages that were caused by the fire, which is another interesting thing. I don't know if you saw any of the videos that showed the smart meters that were on fire. There was a guy who had two different structures on his property. One had a smart meter, the other did not. The one with the smart meter burned to the ground. The one without wasn't touched by the fire. Another video, did you see the man who videotaped all the houses around him were completely burned down, and his house is the only house on the block that was untouched? And he's crying in the video and going, I don't understand why the Lord would allow me to, keep my house. I'm not worthy of this. And they were saying, well, it's because he's a Christian, and God protected his home. And it may be. We saw churches in the Maui fire that were not touched. There was a Pentecostal church there on the island of Maui, and it was right there in the middle of the inferno, and it didn't even burn down. So I'm not saying that God can't keep his hand on things. We've seen Bibles that were in those fires that the Bible was untouched and everything around it was burned to a crisp, but the Bible was fine. The outer cover was burned a little bit, but the pages you could read fine. And so, I mean, God can do anything because he's God. But the interesting thing is, and the reason why we talked about this today, is because of the eerie similarities to Maui and the smart city connection. Could it be something, or is this just a coincidence, Vince? It's very interesting.
Have we answered that question today?
I don't think that we can answer that question today. I mean, it's one of those things that we know there's a world government out there. This world government wants to implement these smart cities in two different places within the United States where they talked about implementing these huge smart cities. Fires broke out and burned everything to the ground.
All right, well, I guess let's hear what everyone thinks.
Yeah.
1, if you think it's connected to a smart city, put 1 in the comments, or put 2 in the comments if you think it's nothing to do with that at all. Be interested to see some of your reactions out there, so be sure to let us know. Also, don't forget that endtime.com and watch.osn.tv is available to you. There's thousands of hours of content there that's totally free, and all that's made free, including this show, because of partners like you that give every single month at endtime.com/give. So we'd ask you to pray about what maybe you would contribute, what the Spirit wants you to give to this ministry to help further God's kingdom around this world. You can give at endtime.com/give. You can give by calling 800-END-TIME. Please consider doing that today. And don't forget to pray for us above everything else. We'll see you right back here tomorrow at 3 p.m. Central Time. God bless you.